So
Sorry. Okay.
thank,
Now.
now, thank you so much for having me. I don't think anything started with Good Monday. I actually started back in 2009, where I started something called Sweet Deal, which was like a replica of the Groupon solution for a big media company called Mecom, UK owned, and also owned a lot of Danish newspapers. And what happened back then was that I was a part of a media company, and I looked at the distribution network that we had as a media company and said, like, okay, so if we know all the readers and we know where they're coming from, we had 50 websites at that point. We had just around 70 newspapers. Let's just see how we can actually create new startups based on that ground. So the first one was Sweet Deal, which was pretty big because it was just around 25 million pounds the first year. And we made a lot of different companies and took it to from Denmark to Sweden to Poland to the Baltics and to the Netherlands. And then I entered a company called Issue, which is the largest publishing company in the world. I think they have like just around 2 billion eyeballs today. And to be able to do that, we had to get the biggest publishers on board. So we needed Vanity Fair, we needed JQ, we needed New York Times, and we needed all their back catalogs of everything that they had. So we took Issue from Copenhagen to New York. And then at some point we took it to Palo Alto, where we got Joe Herken on board, the former CEO of Yahoo. And then I went back to New York and started a company called Lemonsqueeze. And Lemonsqueeze helped European companies enter and expand into the US. So it was European and Asian companies who wanted a foothold in the US. We did that for 5 years, got acquired in 2017 by Knotel, Amol Sava, and Edvard Generovic. And then I went back to Denmark and started Good Monday. And Good Monday was basically just a tool for, it was a SaaS solution to make sure that you can keep everything within premise when it comes to office management solutions. So if you have something that you want privately, let's just say coffee. Normally coffee at an office is pretty boring, but if you have something that you really want, why not make every B2B solution at an office B2C related? So that's actually what we did. And we got funding within the first 30 days based on a Figma, and got 3.4 million Danish. I don't know how much that is in pounds, but we got enough money in for us to get kickstarted. And then Creandum came on board 6 months later to actually just follow this solution. And we got acquired in 2022 by DEAS, which is one of the largest real estate mongols in the Nordics. And now I started Humani, which is psychometrics on a higher level. What we're trying to do is make sure that it's not just C-level who figure out who they are and why they're the person they are, but it's actually for everyone.
Oh my God, that is so much for us to dive into. I love it. I actually want to start off talking a little bit about the media side of your journey. One of the top categories we have of startups in this cohort are actually in the media and entertainment sector, and we don't get to talk to people with a lot of experience in that. So let's make the most of your experience. What would you say is the best advice you have for founders who, as a startup, need to get large brands, like you mentioned Vanity Fair, on board? Like, how do you go about contacting them? What's that sort of like sales or procurement process like? And do you have any advice on breaking into these larger companies?
Yeah, so no, I'm Danish. So we in Denmark, we kind of like talk about the weather and our kids for 2 minutes, and then we go directly into business. In the US, it's different because you're not your brand. You're going to be here for like 50 to 100 years. So you have to take your time. The first meeting that I had in New York, the guy that I talked to was from one of the larger brands within fashion industry and magazines. And he actually sent me a long email. And the email said something about make sure that you don't just think of yourself as someone that wants to create value, but see yourself as the brand that wants to create a brand for yourself, because we're going to meet each other again. I'm not going to stay at this brand forever. I'm going to change roles. You're not going to stay at your brand forever. You're going to change roles. So let's instead see this as a journey, because you're so Danish. You just want to get revenue and you just want to move forward. But this is a relationship. This is something that's going to go on. And he wrote me, I'd rather have 4 meetings with you and then buy something for you and buy something for you in every single company you go into, than buy something for you right now based on it's a good product. So actually, he said, you're the product in all of this. And he also said, he was extremely kind. He said, it's probably because you were a novice. It's probably because you're young. You don't know shit. And that's why you're moving so fast.
I wish everyone spoke with that level of like transparency and honesty. What a valuable bit of feedback he shared. Do you when you kind of, I guess, like change your sales pitch strategy, did you find that to be effective in the meat industry? Like, did it make a noticeable difference when you shifted to starting from a place of like relationship building?
Yeah, so definitely my name comes before my brand. And I make sure that people are actually more curious about me as a person than the brand, because there's going to be several brands. And now, again, I'm an unusual founder because I've sold my companies within 5 years, all of them. So if you sell your company within 5 years, then the company name doesn't live on with you, but you do. And if you want to, let's just say that I want to create companies till I'm 70, then I'm going to create 30. So there's just something in it where you kind of want to make sure that the philosophy, the ethos of the company is something that's inside of you, more than the company itself, because then you're just a company.
What does that look like on a practical level? Like, let's say you found the person, I don't know, head of blah, blah, blah at Condé Nast or whatever. What does that actual sort of like end-to-end process like of a cold email to a, you know, a mutually valuable relationship?
Yeah, so the way it looks, like, again, for me, it's so much easier now than it was before I actually had a name. Because now when people see it and they look it up, it's the entrance is so much easier. But back then it was more like telling the true story of where I'm actually reaching out. So taking away revenue, eyeballs, everything else that you could put into it, and saying like, I'm just so super fucking curious. I think you're utterly cool. I want you. And the reason why I want you is because of X. So actually putting the X in front. I think my company could be more valuable. I think what you're doing, and then putting out articles, making sure you have the details, putting in maybe a few references to a few articles and saying like, I've read this the 17th of October. I read this the 16th of March, like really being able to put your effort into the work of doing a proper introduction.
Okay. I know today is supposed to be about teams, but since you have so much experience, I want to touch on a few more things before we go into team building. For I think Good Monday, you mentioned that you raised funds within like 30 days of launching the company. How exactly did you do that based off of your track record? And also, can you talk a little bit about the role that like the Figma design played in that? Did you bring it to life for investors? Is that what caused them to write the check?
Yeah, so just to give you a bit of background, like, so right now I'm Chief Brand Officer of Humani. And what I do is, first of all, I take a brand and bring it to life. So I take something where you can feel it before there is a product, because product is extremely cool. It's something everybody should have. You can take machine learning, AI, and so forth. But feeling a product is super difficult. So instead of starting with the multi-dimensional way of looking at a product, but instead taking the soul of a product or a company and bringing it up forth is what I'm all about. So with Good Monday, it was all about the look and feel, the branding experience, the way of wanting to be a part of a community that was front and center. So when the investors saw it the first time, we didn't have anything at all, but they could feel it. So it was a big thing. I think the valuation was just around 35 million Danish. So I don't know what that is in pounds. Is that 3.5 million pounds? But it was based on Figma and Keynote. So it was nothing. But the feeling was there, and everyone wanted to be a part of the team. And I think that's important. And I think you should always start with the narrative of, is there an ethos where people actually want to join your journey more than, is this a product that want to survive in the world?
How do you go about creating that brand within such a short period of time? Especially, I imagine that it evolves even within the conversations that you have with investors. The roadmap's probably changing and shifting a little bit. So how does that brand change, or does it, or is it set from day one? And then also, how does that manifest into the the design that you're showing investors? And then one step further, once you get the money and you're starting to hire people, how does that translate? I mean, maybe we save the team bit for the next question. That's a lot right there.
So the product evolves. The ethos and the narrative of the company doesn't evolve, because Good Monday is based on, why live for Fridays, Saturday, and Sunday when you can have 7 days a week? Why just live for 3? So that was the entire thing. It's about making sure that you can actually have the full experience 7 days a week instead of just having it a few days a week. That didn't change at any point. The narrative and the ethos was also, I wanted to create this as a phenomenal environment. I wanted to make sure that this is actually something where you feel that you're getting a big hug. For me, that's something that's not masculine. For me, that's something that only women can give. Like, it's something that's special, where you feel that you're taken care of. It's something that is united, and that didn't change at any point. It's something where you just feel close to something.
How did you build that into the product? Like, did you have any or I guess, like, did you first go about like creating the tone of all of your comms, the website, the specific voice of the brand, and then like the color palette? Was that kind of like the sequence?
Yeah, so that's the entire brand book. So the brand book was actually the reason why we got investment. The same with Humani. It all started with the brand book, where people could understand, okay, this is the direction they're going in. So there's something about fonts. There's something about illustrations, animations. There's something about color, tonation. And when you figure that out, suddenly you create this thing that is you. Maybe there'll be a product, maybe there won't, but I like the direction.
Okay.
And I think, like, right now we're in a difficult situation because of the world's economy, but I think hitting the tone before actually hitting the product is more important, because then you can always build product. If you build a product, building the tone, the tonality of the product is super difficult.
How did you push back when, I'm guessing some investors would say, okay, come back once you have a little bit of traction. We love the brand, but want to see it, in the market first. Well, first of all, I guess, did you get asked that? And second of all, how did you come back to that?
No, I didn't get that question.
Oh my gosh, you're probably the first founder I've ever met who didn't get that. That's interesting. I mean, I guess you had a long track record before.
Yeah, but well, there's a US and a European version of getting venture cash, right? You can easily go into stealth mode if you're in the US. So rather build the big thing that actually works, and then make sure that you keep your cash low, have sure that you have technology and product in order, and then come out with a bang, more than coming out and creating traction and revenue immediately. Because then you just become a mom and pop shop. So there's something in actually creating the monster of actually going out there with something that couldn't be replicated in a second.
Okay, let's now move on to teams. Can you talk a little bit about Humani? You said you're doing psychometric. Is it evaluations or guidance for people? Does that come into like how you assess potential team members as well?
Yeah, so I can tell you what Humani is all about, because what we're doing is taking psychometrics and putting it upside down. So for some of you, I don't know how many is on this call, but for some of you, if you tried a personality test, 300 questions, you get some feedback, you see something that is 50 pages long on a PDF. And then you look at it and you're kind of like, okay, makes some sense. But for you to dig deeper into it, you need a consultant to tell you what it's all about. And then he's going to talk to you about what's your worries, or is there anything I can help you with? What we're doing is, instead of putting a consultant in place, we're saying, okay, what's your problem? And you're saying like, it's difficult for me to find team dynamics. It's difficult for me to do whatever it is. Based on that, you don't get 300 questions. Maybe you'll get 40, because you don't need 300. Then we'll give you a result, but we'll also give you a result with different tasks that you can actually use. So you can start actually utilizing this in your life. And you can see, I actually think a perfect analogy is, if you go to a shrink or a couple therapist, they wouldn't start asking you 300 questions. They would start with, why are you here? But no one in the psychometric world does that. They always start with 300 questions. And everything is based on the same foundation, which is the Big Five and C.F. Jung. So they're all open sourced, 150 years old. And they all start with questions instead of figuring out, what do you want to solve? Like, where are you going? And that's what we do. So you don't need the consultant. You can make sure that everyone in the company can actually get this, and it's ongoing. So it's not a one-time thing. So it's something where you can just keep on elaborating on it.
And this is something that people can bring on for their employees, right? It's not individual use. It's like for your team.
Yeah. But you could also use it privately. Like I can use it with my wife and say kind of like, how come we never agree on anything, or how come conversations go in the wrong order, or anything like that, right? And then when we figure out who we are, then suddenly we can see like, okay, it's because I'm dominant and competitive, and maybe she's not. Maybe that would be a thing. And then we can say, okay, then I need to stop being dominant. I need to stop being competitive, so I don't, and maybe over communicating, so I don't speak over her head. So it can be used in all, like, again, a team is 2, but it's also 5, it's also 50.
What does your process look like for hiring people? Do you put people through, like, I guess a test similar to this and ask them to come with a challenge and see how they complete the test? Or what's your approach to hiring?
It's difficult for us not to do that, right? Because we have the instrument for it. But I think the most beautiful part is we just got a new hire a few months ago. And he's the opposite of me. And what happens in a hiring process is that normally you'll hire someone where you can reflect yourself in that person because you want to have fun. Like, there's all these different things. He's not. He is the exact opposite of me. But I actually need the exact opposite. But what I also need is how to communicate with that person, how to actually have a relationship with that person. And knowing who he is, I can give you a direct example. If I send him a link to an article about something that's within psychometrics, he will read it, and then he'll give me 2 pages back on all his insights on it. And all I wanted to do was just to share the link. I didn't need any insights. So now I know that I'm wasting his time if I'm sending too many links, because I shouldn't.
Perdi and I think a few months after we started our company, we did the 16 personalities test just kind of for fun. And then both of us, I think, thought the profile was fairly accurate of descriptions of ourselves. And so we read it about each other. And it was so interesting hearing exactly that. Like, when one person says something, blah, 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 and they mean it that way, it's like how you say something and how someone receives it can be entirely different. And we would have never been aware that, we would have had this communication mismatch without knowing that beforehand.
But it's just so generic, right? So you took a test that you could take if you were from Africa or Argentina, or male, female, rich, poor, like everything, same test that you take. But nobody is taking into consideration the position or situation that you're in, which makes it weird. It's the same test for everyone. And I know that it's personality, but we all have different challenges that we're up against. So what you're fighting with is probably not the same thing that I'm fighting with right now. So we have different challenges.
So I guess understanding the context behind the
Exactly.
results, that makes sense. So in terms of hiring, what are the questions that you found are the most insightful of a person's personality or how they're going to be matched with your culture and mission?
In Denmark or in US?
Both. I'm from the US, so I don't mind hearing about that either.
So in the US, I couldn't ask any questions. So that was when I said, thank you for a great interview, and walked them to the elevator. So I could ask them all the questions that was kind of personal, because for me, everything is personal. And I want to make sure that everyone that I hire, that they get the most out of their life. So if they're not happy because they're not using their immediate strength, then it doesn't matter. You want to get up in the morning. And for me, my own belief is, do you know that feeling when you're going on a vacation somewhere and you have to be at the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up and you're just super fresh immediately because you're happy, because you love what you're going to do. You just have to go out there. Creating that experience is only based on you doing what you think is fun every single day. And people lie in resumes. That's why it should be opposite. We should take a personality test. We should be a part of ourselves, put it out there, and then people should hire us based on where we get the most out of life, more than us lying to see if we can get a job and some revenue. Oh, I don't know what's that. Money, at least. But there's something that's wrong in that entire equation. So my typical questions would be repeatedly, is this going to make you happy? Is this going to make you happy? Are you going to be happy doing this? Would this be something where you could see yourself be happy? And for myself, I'm going to, and I still don't know how many is online. I know that I can relax when I take a shower. I can relax when I'm with my wife and my kids, and I can do stuff where I'm not feeling that I owe someone something because I'm doing whatever it takes. I don't want to hire someone where they feel like they're obligated to do something that they're not hired to do. And that is difficult. So I actually asked them, would you be happy in this situation?
Are people honest answering that?
No.
Do they...
No, not if they really need the job. But there is, like, again, in Denmark, also because we have a great job situation at the moment, people are actually really honest. But you can also feel it. Like, again, let's just say that I wanted someone to be evangelist for my company and be on stage. It's pretty easy to figure out if they're introvert. And of course, they shouldn't be on stage. So I think it's more about figuring out, asking the questions about a similar situation to the job that they're doing at home. Accounting. Do you like to take care of your private economy? Are you the one at home making sure that everything is in order? When it comes to extrovert, is kind of like, are you the one that invites people over for Friday dinner? Like, so taking a private situation where they feel comfortable and that's what they do, and bring it into their business life. And again, it's so stupid to say business and private because everything is intervened, everything is in together. So
yeah,
you just have to figure out what tricks you. Where do you find your energy?
how do you assess, actually, before I ask that, reminder everyone, we'll move to Q&A shortly. So please put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. How do you assess for things like work ethic?
I want to say I don't. But for me, it's all about, again, the private questions about what do you do at home? What's your roles? Again, there's a big difference between being 18 years old and 40. But there's something in, if you take responsibility in your private life, you also do it in your business life. So there's just something in, you can't just let go of it. And I'm leaning heavily against that thing. But again, you don't know. But again, our test is actually showing if that's something you want. It's kind of fun. So with our test, if you take a personality test today, you could get a question where you figure out if you're lazy or not. But is lazy a bad thing? Or is that you being extremely motivated of finding a direction that is super easy? And what we're trying to do is just to figure out how to make sure that we can figure out, is it laziness or is it efficiency? And when you talk to a person, like, it's super difficult to figure out if they're one or the other. If they take a test, then it's, if you do you always want to find the quickest route to a goal? Yes. Okay, now you're lazy in a normal test. The second question would be, are you goal-oriented and do you want to succeed? If the next answer is yes, then suddenly you move away from laziness over to actually goal-oriented. And then you can keep on adding on those. So you figure out if it's actually laziness or it's because you're actually extremely great at your job.
That makes so much sense. I think sometimes, like, it's so easy for something to be labeled as laziness if you just look at like one instance, but when you look as what you said, like the full context, it's like, okay, in order to be highly productive in this category where you're at, you know, operating at your absolute best, you need to be quote unquote lazy doing X, Y, and Z in order to get that high output over here. But if you're only looking over here, you know, you just don't see that full picture. What advice do you
I
have?
can say it again, like as a CEO, I hired people to make decisions on my behalf that I knew were extremely great in their areas because I didn't have time for it. That doesn't make me lazy. That makes me efficient. Two different
That's
things.
a good example. Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to brand DNA, what advice do you have for founders, especially those who are from like an engineering background or super focused on the product? If they haven't really thought that much about the story of the product, the branding, and perhaps that's out of their area of expertise, how can they go about creating that?
Can you repeat the start of the question?
For founders who are going like creating the DNA of their company or even thinking about it for the first time, how should they start that process?
Like everything starts with some kind of nerve and heart and heartbeat. So you know already, right, like which problem you want to solve. Like my best guess is that there's a lot of founders in here. Everything is about insight, problem, solution. So you have an insight of something, there's a problem you want to solve, and the solution is your product. And I don't think that the solution could be there without the nerve and energy of a founder. So it's all about them. What I do, and that's, again, super primitive, but what I do is I imagine everything on a t-shirt or a cap and make sure that if I want to wear it, I'm it. So I keep on telling myself, what would it be? And then I ask 100 people what they think within 2 hours, instead of walking around with the thoughts for myself. So I'm super fast at going out there. I could go to the street and ask 100 people within an hour just to get some certainty, which could seem weird, but I don't care.
What's an example of a question that you'd be asking them?
Like, so for example, I had a vox pop. I was traveling from 2 different Danish cities, where what I did was 3 different questions. What do you feel about the brand? What's your association with the brand? And is this a brand that you would support? Just those 3, and then gave them examples. And I just wanted to see if they leaned left or right.
And are you doing that even if the people on the street, you know, they're probably not in your target market? And I'm thinking especially for those like engineering techie founders who are selling to you know, other engineers or a heavy technical product.
I'm a brand nerd, so I would go down to the street and ask people about a brand that wasn't mine, just to see if my way of reflecting the brand was the same as them, even though they were not in the target group, just to figure out where do people go. And I don't care about a target group at all, because I believe that the future is B2C. And it is B2B that's buying, right? But everything is B2C to B now. You don't wear like your work cap and say like, now I'm an office manager or now I'm an accountant. You are who you are. If you like the brand, if you like the feeling, if it's something you can relate to, if it's associable, then you'll buy it.
I guess it's as you said earlier, even if you sell B2B, the person at the B that you sell to is still a person who has to come across your brand and connect with it.
Correct.
Okay, we're getting some questions. Andrea, I've seen your question or your hand raised for a while, so why don't you go ahead and start off the questions, and then we'll take one from the chat. are you there? You're on mute and your camera's off, so I can't tell whether or not you're there. Okay, we're gonna move to Francisco. If you reappear, then stick your hand up again.
Hi, Mick. Just a quick fire. What does this logo makes you feel?
Is it a gaming company?
That's close. Yeah, it's a sports brand. It's a sports technology
It's a sports
platform.
brand.
It's a sports brand. Yeah.
Is it masculine? Is it made for men?
That's a very good point. No, it's made for both, but we have toned down the red to sort of a salmon, but this is a bit, I don't think the colors can go through very well, but this is a bit more salmon than a red.
I can tell you one thing is, I wouldn't recognize the two letters. I would only recognize the T. I would see it as a Pokemon ball, like immediately. And I would say like that it was extremely masculine, so my wife wouldn't wear it.
Got it.
Which is fine. You only have men involved in what you do.
Got it. Thank you.
Love that you just jumped in there. You took his advice and acted on it instantly, Francisco. Love it. Okay, first question from the chat from Tim. Does the Humani test work for people across the neurodiverse spectrum?
Yes.
All right, easy answer. Next question from Jim. How does one replicate your process? It sounds like it's one-to-one. Does it work for one-to-many? I think he's talking about the Humani kind of like, I guess, like diagnostic process.
Hiring people?
Jim, do you want to come on and like clarify your question a little bit? Jim, are you here? Or do you want to take yourself off mute?
Yeah, I'm here. Just basically my video's not working. So anyway,
No problem.
Hey,
so Mick, basically, from my understanding, it looked like you got a product, but it seems that you got great wealth and great knowledge, and you know, how do you replicate that to somebody who doesn't have the same level of experience or knowledge as you do on your platform? Because it seems like it's a one-to-one test, but how do you replicate that to do it say one-to-many people?
I think I need you to repeat that. Is that based on skill level?
Jim, did you hear Mick's question?
Yes, I'm listening. Yeah.
Is it based on skills?
More behind it.
Like, so again, what we do right now is normally, I don't know how much you know about psychometrics, but normally there is one test, right? So you have HOCON, you have TC38, you have the Big Five, you have all of the psychometric tests out there. They all start with 300 questions, they're one test. They all say they're the best. And then based on that, you get a result. That result needs to be translated by a consultant for you to actually make some kind of use out of it. What we do is we create millions and millions of tests based on the situation you're in, who you are, where you're from, and how it's set up. Again, a few of the questions that you get before you actually start the test has something to do with age, seniority, how long you've been part of a product or part of an assignment. So we know something about where we should put the questions. But every time there's a new challenge, there's a new set of questions. So our product keeps on evolving and keeps on repeating itself. So instead of having one test that fits all, we're going to have millions and millions of tests for different requirements, for different attitudes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Rahul, next question.
Hello. Hey, Mick, pretty interesting insights. So thank you for that. A quick question regarding branding. I had a quick look at Humani LinkedIn page, and there is not a single post in the last 8 months. Is that a deliberate strategy that like create bit of some sort of excitement before it formally comes out of?
Yeah, Humani.
Go ahead.
You're talking about Humani?
Yeah, human here.
Yeah. So we're actually going to. Have you been to our webpage?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So we're actually going to take that down a notch when we release a new investment. So we're actually going to go back to something that's even more informal. So we're going to go back to, we'll be there soon. And again, we want to be in stealth mode. We want to make sure that we can create traction. Right now, we're building up community. And what we're doing is we're reaching out to people and culture people. So we've called our community Pancakes and Champagne Club, which is PNC Club. We're taking in everyone that's something with this melody. We're telling them everything about our product, but not giving the world anything. So when we open up for use case number 1, we'll have the 200 leading people within people and culture as part of the team. So we want to actually keep it as discreet as possible to see if we can push it in the right direction, because they're all going to feel like they're a part of the product. If we start giving too much, then it will be too much. So we actually want to keep it hidden if possible.
But now, just a follow-on question. I mean, because you are a serial founder and you have a background, so in your case, either people will know you, also the investor knows, okay, you have built that before, but someone who is not in your space, and so you need to kind of like make noise, go out in the market, both for investors and as well your potential customers, like your first customers. If you are not giving them enough information, and if they don't know you as a brand yet, how do you then build that curiosity?
But investors are getting all the information, of course, if they want to be a part of it. Decision makers, the CPs of the company, right? So you have some company personas that you want to reach out to, and you have some buyer personas. We're giving them the full Monty of everything. The reason why we're doing pancakes and champagne is because if someone invites you to pancakes, you don't say no, because it's so innocent. It's something where everybody can relate, right? If you invite them for a dinner or coffee, it's work-related. Pancakes, it's not work-related. And that's why we have pancakes and champagne, because that's just like, you can tell your wife and she'll say like, have fun, honey, just go for it. But if you tell her that you're going for coffee on a Saturday, she'll say no, like be with you, be with me and my kids. So what we're doing is we're building up a humble but mediating community where people can actually feel that they're at home. And we're not talking about Humani. We've had a few events. The next 3 to 4 events, we're not going to talk about our product. We're just getting people together. But talking to investors and telling them which people within people and culture that we're having in this community, they start being excited. It's kind of like, oh, you have those guys on board and they're also part of it. We're not talking about product, but they're just a part of the community build. And I think that's important.
Interesting. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's true. I don't know how anyone could say no to pancakes and champagne. Okay, Ollie, I'm going to go to your question in just a moment. Purdy has a quick question, so I'll let her come in, and then Ollie will go to you.
I was just wondering about, if you're making your perfect team and you're focusing on what makes people happy, how do you blend together everyone being happy in a team dynamic? Because, you know, when you do like the classic personality test, they'll be like, oh, you need to have someone that's the visionary, someone that's the completer finisher, someone that brings everybody together and comes up with loads of ideas. If you've got loads of people, just loads of different things make them happy, how do you put them together so they're all collectively happy?
But that's what we're doing. So right now you're talking about a founding team.
Or any team, like if you've hired.
No, you're not talking about any team, because in a sales team, you share the two top values. Because you're competitive, you also want recognition. If you're in a marketing team, there's different things. Customer success is another thing. So from team to team, there needs to be some values that are upfront and center, because we just know that. We've seen that for so many teams. A founding team, there is something about resilience, where you need to have a high level of resilience. You also need to have someone that's competitive and selling in. But the dynamic is all about you supporting each other, but not so much just supporting, but also figuring out if anything goes in one or the other direction, how do we support each other? If everyone's alike in a founding team, let's just say that you're a small team of 5. You founded a company, you want to get going. If you're all alike, then if something goes south, if something just doesn't go right, then you'll all push in the same direction, which brings in a big like lag or hole or something else. Just to be aware of that is a big thing. Oh, now we're missing out over here because we're all dragging in this direction. If 4 salespeople go together and create a team, there will be a customer lag. There will be probably also a detail lag of some kind, because they're not detail oriented, they're goal oriented. So they're just running as fast as humanly possible. But just to tell them, you have to take care of detail, because you're all the same. You're all so goal oriented. It's something that's super important.
But if you've got, like, I used to work in a customer success team, and so I'm very organized. And so the things that I do at home and how I would like to work in an office environment will be totally different to someone else who is also working in customer success. Because even though our job is the same and we're both kind of have the same motivations, the way that we work is totally different.
Yeah.
So I guess
but there is something about making sure that you actually take care of them. There is something about, I want to make other people feel happy. There's something in the questions that you ask where you figure out if you're actually someone that wants to create the best situation of someone or not. And in the team, that's why like our Humani is not just made for hiring and building up teams. It's also built for letting go of team members, because I've let go of team members where I thought like they were not performing, but on the other hand, they're keeping 10 members together and making sure they were the best version of themselves. Just that knowledge, if I had that back then, I would have done everything completely different, especially during COVID, but I didn't. So I just took the ones where I think, okay, they're the least performing people. I'm going to let them go. But some of them, just by letting them go, I just fucked up the entire infrastructure of the DNA of the company.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Ollie, over to you.
Hey, Mik. I've got to say, first off, I'm kind of in love with your philosophy here. So I love how you have like this holistic view of, how people's identity play into Humani. And it's resonating with me because I share a lot of our mission at Whisper is to essentially turn brands' communities into their best influencers. And we look at the individual, what we call friendfluencer, but you can call them a consumer advocate's identity, and kind of match them with brands. I was kind of interested in your thoughts around differentiating between online identity, like a digital identity, because that's obviously what we get to look at, and like real, or like say in real life identity. And if you differentiate distinctly between them, or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I would say like, I know you want to, like everyone wants to build a company super fast. And they just want to make sure that it's scalable. So everything happens organically through digital versions. But the truth is that building a community would take you at least 2 years. And the community, if you get the right ones on board, are everything. So I can give you an example of this being digital and not analog, but at Issue, what we did in the beginning was we started by putting up the most valuable items that we had within content. So the most beautiful content that was out there. That meant that after getting a few thousand of those items online, the next ones were going to be beautiful as well. So with our competitors, they just put up all the shit they could find out there. And that meant that the next thing that came up was shit, because you just replicate what you see. When it comes to community, if you get the best ones on board, the second best will be next. And I think that's how you should build a brand. You shouldn't be too, you should be able to take your time and actually build it up in the right manner.
All right. Ollie, sorry, did you have a follow-up question? Oh, that was it.
No, I'm just saying cheers. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Raj.
Mike, thank you so much. I think in the beginning I was slowly dozing off, but then, with the energy you were giving to the session, like I was completely awake, seriously, one of the best session in the hotbed so far. So I have a question related to my brand, basically, thanks to Francisco to open up this. So my brand name is Reach. What we are building is basically an online service booking platform for consumers. Like if you need a plumber, if you need a window cleaner or a domestic cleaner, you can actually find through our platform. So, so the name Reach is actually to, for consumers, you're reaching out to the service providers, and for service providers, you're reaching out to the consumers. It's a dictionary word, and
so it's like handy.
It's like handy, yeah, handy in America, absolutely. The only difference between handy and ours is like, we allow the business to represent themselves rather than being a freelancer in the platform. So you set your price, we give tools to actually brand your own company in our platform. So it's like micro websites in a marketplace. And we also give a small business management software for them, so they can literally take care of the entire end-to-end cycle of customer identity, customer discovery, all the way up to online reputation management and everything. So I love the name Reach, but my wife, my son, they don't like it, and some of my founders, like some of my investors, they like it. The people I have spoken to, hundreds of them, they like it. So every time I show the logo to my family, they say like, you have to change it. So the logo actually is designed in a way that, all these internal lines are basically the network. And the way I wanted to represent my brand is, when you open the app, you see that there is a network of humans, like human faces. And then, a line will be starting from one point and go everywhere, and the logo will be in the middle, and then it reach out to the. So it just represents what we are actually doing with our product. I would like to get some feedback from you, with whatever I just shared so far, just to get the confidence, or take the comments from you on it.
But you can you can shoot me an email after this session. Your logo is a stretch. I totally get it. I totally get why you want to do it like this. I totally get the components of seeing how the infrastructure is done. The way that I would feel it, again, also with Good Monday, was if my if the ones that I had on board were actually doing the service, and the clients that I had were the ones doing the service was actually part of their network, if they would wear my brand, not just when they were sleeping or jogging, but also going to the city, then I would be happy. So I had to figure out what actually drives them. I think Reach is a fucking great name. I think the logo sucks.
Okay, thank you.
Because the name is so good. So what I would do is probably, I wouldn't do much. I would, because I know that you need a favicon, but I would probably just do the fonting of Reach in a different way and set it up. And I would probably do it more bold. I would probably do it so you can't see half of the R and half of the H. So it was so big that it was almost unseeable. Like it would be something that was within everything. And then I would get rid of that logo.
Okay. Thank you so much. You know, I mean, for being honest and, you know,
Sorry. So it's no harsh thing. It's just because one thing is if it makes sense for yourself in your own brain.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Another thing is if it.
I mean, I don't want to just change it because my family don't like it, you know, like, so I want some. And
I totally get that. Totally get that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mik. Yeah.
You're welcome. Always.
All right, we have to end the session there. That was a great way to end it. And Mik, thank you so much for your time and your honesty. And I'm pretty sure everyone now wants to ask you the opinion on the logo. I want to ask you opinion on our brand, but I won't. Thank you so much for your time. Founders will stick around if you have any questions. If not, wave goodbye to Mik. Yeah, thank you. And we'll send around your LinkedIn profile afterwards too.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mik. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Shall we stop?